Hi, and welcome back. It is the new year, and there's lots on the horizon. And over the holidays, took a little bit of a break from talking specifically overtly about politics. But here we are into the new year, and the Liberal Party of Nova Scotia out with a release today: sweeping changes needed to tackle affordability crisis. Talked to folks involved with the with the Center for Policy Alternatives and talking about that wage discrepancy between the haves and the have-nots. If we're talking about people who are, at the CEO level, that's one thing. We're talking about people who are on social assistance. That's another altogether different issue. And Zach Churchill is the leader of His Majesty's official opposition, and he joins us here today. And Zach Churchill, Happy New Year. Good to see you.
Happy New Year, Sheldon. Thanks for having me back on the show.
What can you say about this disparity? And I think, in all fairness, you were a member of a couple of governments where, there was pressure to do something about social assistance rates, and there was movement, there was some look at and assessment of that. And then this year that was 2021 with inflation, and that seems to be the biggest reason. Is that why the party introduced the legislation it did, and that's why you're making this call today?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, we were part of certainly had the biggest income assistance increase Nova Scotian history under the previous government. So that's one thing that we were happy about. But that was before we're facing this kind of inflation monster that's driving up the cost of living on everything. We've seen food costs go up by over 11% in the last year. Power rates are going up. Price at the pump is going up. And this is really putting the squeeze on a lot of people. It's creating a very precarious situation, not just with low-income Nova Scotians, but members of what we would historically call the middle class, working families, working individuals who are actually bringing in wages into their household. Everybody is being impacted. Fixed income seniors who are living off their pensions or previous investments. So inflation is not something that's only affecting one group of people. It's having a broad-based effect on individuals and on our economy overall. And we really need, I think, our government to start thinking a bit differently about how we approach supporting people and making sure that as the cost of living goes up, government supports that are already available can actually be accessed by these people.
Not lost on me that you're evoking some policy of a nearby provincial government, a progressive conservative government of Blaine Higgs, when it comes to making changes to adapt to this. As you point out, significant changes to social assistance programs, including the indexing of income assistance rates to inflation. Tell me what that is. Tell me why it would help people in Nova Scotia today.
Well, we have folks that are on income assistance in Nova Scotia whose support is not going up during this period of inflation. So the cost of food, fuel, everything else that they're dealing with is going up, and the income that they have to support themselves and their family is static. So we really think an easy thing to do would be to index social assistance support to inflation, so that at least the support people are getting who require that support is keeping pace with the rising costs. But also we have a whole host of government grants that are available to people, whether it's a senior property tax rebate, a caregiver allowance, or home repair grants. These are all income-based criteria. So if you make around $30,000, you're eligible for these. Well, we think the income threshold needs to be increased to take into consideration the rising cost of everything, and because people's money's not going as far as it was. So if you're getting paid, if you're making around $30,000 to $35,000, that money's worth about 10% less than it was last year. And we think that the government supports that are available should be made available for those folks, and we need to increase the income thresholds right now, because less and less people are going to be able to access these as we move forward.
And to be fair, and you weren't the finance minister, but there were calls for this bracket creep to be addressed for years now. People have been saying, as income goes up, the taxation doesn't necessarily take into account that it costs more to live, and that threshold there. So is this about rewriting tax law? Is this about an order in cabinet? Like, how can this affect people or impact people today and not after the budget and after the taxation year?
So the two things that we're asking for are pretty straightforward. One, increase the income thresholds for government grants that are available to people that are income based. So increase them with inflation. So if the income threshold was once $30,000, let's move that up 10%, considering that inflation has gone up by 10%. The second thing we're asking for is to index social assistance to inflation as well, so that people can actually make ends meet during this period and put food on their table for their families. If we don't do this, more and more people are going to fall behind, and that is going to have an impact on our economy, on household spending. How many people are going out to eat and spending money in businesses? It impacts their purchasing power. That impacts businesses across the board and our economy. It's also going to impact government services. It's going to impact the strain on our mental health care system. It's going to impact our hospitals, because we know that financial stress triggers anxiety. It creates very dire circumstances for people, and then we have to support them when they're in their most troubling state of mind, or dealing with their most problematic health situation that they haven't been able to address. So there's income and these things matter when it comes to people's health, and so there's also the implications that can happen on our healthcare system and our mental health care system as well, which both are already extremely strained. So we have to take into consideration all those things, and we think these are two very simple things that the government can do immediately to help people get through this trying time.
Should we not give some credit to the government, who before Christmas said the heating rebate, they increased the thresholds there, they put that in place to deal with exactly what you described, which is this explosion of inflation?
Yeah, and that helps on the heating front for sure, and that's something that we pushed for over a year before they announced it. So certainly happy that they've done that, but it's not just the cost of heat that's going to impact people's well-being over the next number of months. Hopefully, it's not years that we're going to experience this sort of increase in inflation and cost of living. But there's people who need their roofs repaired, who now can't afford to do that, and there's government supports that are available, but they don't meet the income threshold, and their money's not going as far. So if you've got a leaky roof, if you're going to have mold in your walls as a result of that because you can't fix it, you're going to get sick. Your kids might get sick, right? If you're taking care of your loved ones and you need to get the caregivers grant, how are you going to be able to do that when you can't afford to even look after yourself during this period? So the senior property tax rebate, that's something that many seniors benefit from who are on fixed incomes. And it's important to help them, whether it's purchasing their medicine or food or what have you. These are other government supports that, if we increase the income threshold up to keep consistent with the rate of inflation increase, we think can be very helpful for people and get them through this difficult period of time. And it only makes sense, right? If you have income-based thresholds for these programs, whether you're eligible or not, when the dollar is the value of your dollar is going down and the cost of living is going up, we should make the appropriate adjustments so that people can access these when they need them.
In the broader or the bigger picture, and we hear people who point to specific government leaders and say, well, since you've come into power, inflation is through the roof, and you can go on and on and on. That point in time, though, where globally it's recognized that inflation is an issue for everyone right now. So is it realistic to expect that a government, an elected body, has any direct control over what seem to be economic forces?
Well, no, they don't have control over inflation. I mean, this is being primarily driven by the central banks and increases to interest by central banking policy, right? Whether it's printing more money, or now they're trying to deal with inflation by rising interest rates. So these are obviously outside of the scope of authority of the provincial government. But the provincial government has a responsibility to look at the situation and respond appropriately to support people and ensure that they have a high enough quality of life and can survive this period. So what we're talking about is not central bank policy. We're talking about provincial programs and income thresholds, and changing those so that people can access these programs that are already available in our system. They're just not available for people who don't meet the income threshold right now. And we think this is a very easy thing for the provincial government to do to support people during this time. And it also makes sense for income assistance to have that tied to inflation, because you want people to be able to put food on their table and look after their family, or we are going to have a big problem coming out of the situation where you have more intergenerational poverty that people cannot climb out of if they sink even further during this period. So, we think these are very, very easy things to do that are under provincial government's control. They're provincial government programs, and they can respond by making these changes.
You're the MLA for Yarmouth, and people will look at the homelessness issue, and it was only until recently that people said, well, it's not just Halifax, and it's Cape Breton, and it's Bridgewater, it's in Truro. So what's it like in Yarmouth, and how do you deal with a provincial issue, or deal with an issue with a human issue that does sometimes appear to be on scales of much more or greater magnitude in larger population centers, and not forget about the small towns?
Well, and I mean, what you said is true. Like, the homelessness situation has blown up here in Halifax, but for the first time in my political career over the last 12 years, we're starting to see encampments in rural Nova Scotia. So we do have people living in tents right now in Yarmouth during the winter months. Thankfully, we've had mild weather so far, but that can change on a dime here. And we've not seen a strategy from the government to address the kind of emergency housing issue that people are dealing with right now. And that is one area where I do think, government investment is needed. You're not going to have the private sector come in and fix a homelessness situation. Government is going to have to do that. And right now, there is no emergency housing, public emergency housing in Nova Scotia. And we're getting to a point where I don't think we're going to be able to go on without some public emergency housing for people who find themselves, living on the street during cold winter months. Thankfully, there's a lot of local organizations that step up, and individuals in our communities who try to help, whether it's bringing warm food to people or providing a tent or bedding. Even some people bring them into their own homes. We've got a lot of kind of community-based support here in HRM, which is helpful and does deal with some of the pressure there, but those supports don't exist at the same level in rural Nova Scotia. That's for sure.
Some of those agencies say they saw this coming and they said something about this. As someone involved in a previous government, were you hearing indicators? Were you hearing from people who said, "Look out"?
Not like it is now. I mean, the situation has just really ballooned, I think, over the last 2 years, where you're seeing more and more of this, and this popping up in rural Nova Scotia as well, where you didn't tend to see this before. So I certainly think the cost of living pressure, the obviously the housing situation that we're experiencing right now, are really creating kind of an immediate challenges for people and putting them in these sorts of situations.
And I appreciate you stepping out of caucus. This is about making and building a plan, moving a direction towards the next legislative session, I assume. But it's 3 years, a few months away from the next election. So how do you continue to build the brand? How do you continue to build your brand as the leader of Nova Scotia's Liberal Party in order to, perhaps convince people that you should form the next government?
Well, I think my job right now is to hold the government to account, and the Premier hold them to account for the promises he made to fix healthcare, in particular, and ask the really important questions that Nova Scotians are asking right now. My life's getting harder. What's the government doing to help individuals and to help our economy and to help our society kind of weather the storm, get through it, and be stronger on the other side? So, I mean, key to that is ideas. Pushing for ideas that make sense, that are practical, that can help people not just survive this, but hopefully get through it and have opportunities on the other side of it. So that's what I'm going to stay focused on, the issues that I think matter most to people right now, and that is the healthcare system, which has got an incredibly worse over the last 16 months. I have to say that we have more than double the amount of people without a family doctor 16 months after Tim Houston was elected to fix the healthcare system. And he's made decisions that have contributed to that, like getting rid of the family doctor incentive here in Halifax. And for the first time, we actually saw the numbers of people without a family doctor shoot up in the capital region. And that, of course, impacts our emergency rooms. It impacts access to primary care across the province, because a lot of rural Nova Scotians come to Halifax for these services as well. So hold them to account for these things, and develop ideas that can be a clear alternative to the current government's plans.
As a leader, it's your job to be the face of the party. You're the person to stand up in the House. I'm wondering who's your advisor. Who is it that helps you decide? And I'm not taking anything away from the fact that you're the one, all the responsibility lies with you. But I know that there are teams and there are people involved. So where are you drawing from in order to, clarify or crystallize the messages you want to bring to us?
So we got a great caucus team that I certainly rely on a lot for feedback, support, guidance, advice. But also, talk to professionals in the healthcare system. I've been meeting with doctors and nurses, meeting with folks from the business community, whether it's a small business owner or the head of the Chamber of Commerce. And we have a great group of stakeholders in Nova Scotia who deal with everything from poverty to homelessness to providing food for people that you can get a lot of good insight from. So I try to cast a wide net when it comes to ideas and feedback, and use the best of those that I can get.
Well, I will let you get back to your meeting this afternoon. Thank you so much for taking a few minutes to talk to us about the issues that you brought forward today as a party, and for yourself as the leader. And Zach Churchill, all the best, sir.
Appreciate it very much, Sheldon. Thank you so much.